everyone, it's been a little while since I've done one of these videos and a lot has changed in my camera bag, so I think it's time for an update. Today I want to share with you what gear I have in my travel camera bag. I will share another one of these videos with gear in my portrait/wedding camera bag soon. I am just waiting for one more lens to be released before I can do that. 85 1.2 anyone? So when I travel, I take a lot of photos. I usually focus on capturing lifestyle portraits, but I also do landscape photography and some random styles here and there depending on the location, like astrophotography or architecture photography and things like that. On top of photo, I also do a lot of video work when I'm traveling too. I vlog and I like to capture cinematic shots, so this is what I use all this gear for. Starting off on the wide end, I have the GM 24mm f1.4, and I use this lens for a mixture of photo and video. I love this focal length for travel photography because you can incorporate so much of the environment in your frame along with the main portrait too. It's a very versatile travel lens. It's good for portraits, street photography, astro, landscape photography, and on top of that, I think this is the perfect focal length for video. Dan is the main videographer between the two of us, and this has always been his favorite focal length for video. Just like photo, it does a great job at showing off a good balance between the subject and the location. Since it's a wide lens, you also have a little more wiggle room when it comes to movement. You will see less camera shake on a 24mm compared to a 35 handheld, for example. Next, I of course can't leave the house without my favorite focal length. So next I have the GM 35mm f1.4, and I use this lens for the bulk of my travel photography. I am not kidding when I say a 35mm is an extremely versatile focal length. I use this lens for the majority of my wedding photography, portraits, fashion photography, and my travels as well. I like to capture anything from lifestyle images to food, people, and places with it. I find this is a great focal length, just like the 24, to get environmental portraits where you have an even emphasis on the person and the location they're in. And it's also an interesting focal length for cityscapes and landscape photography too. The majority of the time while I'm traveling, this is what I will have on my photo camera. And believe it or not, the primes in my travel camera bag end there. In case you're new to my channel, for my entire photography career, I have exclusively used prime lenses for my work. I capture portrait sessions with primes, and I even cover entire wedding days with prime lenses too. So for me, it's extremely unusual to have zooms in my life. I know you've seen me review lots of zoom lenses on my channel before, but the last zoom lens I actually owned myself was the Canon 24-70 f2.8 Mark I, and that was over 10 years ago, maybe even 15 years ago. I sold that lens and I never got another zoom lens after that until now. So this next lens is replacing my 85mm, which I used to travel with because I already had it in my portrait camera bag. Even though the 85 would produce really beautiful results, it's not as versatile for travel as it is for portraits. So instead, I decided to replace this prime with a 70-200. I ended up going with the GM Mark II version as I'm happy with not only the quality, but the size and weight of this lens. Typically, zoom lenses like this are pretty heavy, but this one's fairly light considering the focal range. This 70-200 ended up being my most used lens in Antarctica actually, so I'm really glad I got my hands on it just before that trip. It is also practically parfocal when using it for video, and the optical image stabilization really helps with video as well. If you think the zooms stop there, they don't. The next lens I have in my travel bag is the G200-600 f4.5-6.3, and can you believe this is the first zoom lens I decided to put back in my camera bag after 10 or so years of being strictly a prime lens photographer? A little bit of a random choice, but the reason I decided to get this lens is again for the compression. I don't know if it's because I'm a portrait photographer or this is just my style of landscape photography, but I love capturing intimate photos of the landscape. While I do also take the wide shot, the close-ups of landscapes are some of my favorite kinds of photos to shoot while I'm traveling, and a 200-600 is ideal for that. One of the downsides of this lens is that it is cumbersome to travel with. It is so big, it's really heavy, so it kind of feels like you're lugging it around sometimes. So I don't take it with me every single time. I really have to pick and choose when the right time to take it is. I have one more zoom lens in my bag. I have more zooms than primes, and that is the 16-35mm f2.8 GM2. I actually fell in love with this lens when I reviewed it late last year. I'll leave any separate reviews and videos about each of these lenses in the description, by the way, if you're interested in seeing more photos from them. But the main reason for this lens is for video. This is such a fantastic focal range and aperture for travel video work. If I need a lens in low light, I can always use the 24 or 35 for those instances. It also doubles up as a photo lens too. If I ever find I need something wider than 24, I can pop this on for those moments. Last but not least, this is kind of a lens I have in my camera bag. It is the 2x teleconverter. This lets compatible lenses double in focal length at the cost of half the light. Sony also have the 1.4x converter, however, I mainly use a teleconverter when I need as much reach as possible, so 2x is the right one for me. I know the GM 100-400 is a popular lens for landscape, wildlife, and travel photographers, but I didn't want to add a whole other lens to my kit, let alone another physically large lens. So instead, with this 2x teleconverter, I can use it on the 70-200 to turn it into a 140-400 with a constant aperture of f/5.6. So that is essentially my 100-400. And I ended up using this combination so heavily in Antarctica. I do hope we can see an update to the 2x in particular from Sony, as it could be a touch sharper when used with some lenses. But overall, I've been happy with the image quality, and the autofocus performance is great as well. So those are all my lenses. Next we have camera bodies. My main photography camera body is the Sony a7 IV, which I have been super happy with. The autofocus performance is solid. I like the 33 megapixel files, they're good for cropping. I actually did some pretty significant crops in some wildlife photos I took in Antarctica, and the final image is still decent in size. So overall, no major complaints from me there. Since Dan mainly focuses on video, he has the main video camera. So sometimes I'll do a bit of video on my a7 IV, but Dan mostly does all the video work. So he has been using the Sony a7S III ever since it came out, and it is an amazing camera. However, he did recently upgrade to the a9 III for video work instead, so that's what he'll be using from now on. I still have some travel videos to share from our travels last year that were filmed on the a7S III, so the a9 III footage will come after my Morocco, Australia, and Portugal trips. And I do find that it's really nice that we're both on the same ecosystem, so we get to share all our lenses and we only need to take one set. So usually I'll be with the 35 and the 70-200, and Dan will have the 24 and the 16-35 in his bag, since those are the 4 main lenses that we always take on every single trip. I also always travel with a drone. I have 2 drones that I like taking with me. I usually just pick one or the other. I have the Mini 3 Pro, and this one is great if I plan on doing lots of hiking, so I don't really want something that's big and heavy on me for those trips. Otherwise, if we're hiring a car or not doing any big hikes, I'll take the Mavic 3 Pro with me. I definitely prefer the quality of the Mavic, but for the size and weight, I think the Mini 3 Pro takes really fantastic footage, so it's worth it. Next, I want to talk about bags and accessories. So I'm not a fan of traveling with an actual camera bag. I feel like it puts a bit of a target on my back, so I prefer to use bags that look like normal bags. I have this cute little backpack that I love taking with me. It's not an actual camera bag, so there are no inserts or anything like that inside, so I have to use my own. I have these pouches that I put my gear in and then put in the bag, and I'll leave those linked in the description, as some of you were asking me about them in my other videos. You would have also seen me using these 2 bags over the last year, and these are camera bags, and I absolutely love the way they look. They are from Taz & Tez, which is an Australian company, and this video or segment is not sponsored by them, but these bags were gifted to me for full disclosure, but I genuinely really love using them. The side bag is good for portrait sessions where I need to keep a single lens or a couple of lenses to switch around on my camera, and the backpack is great for traveling. They're more comfortable than my non-camera bag since they do have proper padding inside. I do also sometimes take a real camera bag. I have this one from Incase, and so does Dan, so sometimes we have 2 of the same bag that we bring with us. And I have been using this bag for my photo sessions and my weddings for over a decade. I honestly absolutely love this bag, and it fits everything that I need inside. I also want to quick fire some accessories I always travel with. I've been using this Peak Design camera leash where I've attached the quick releases to my Arca plate at the bottom of my camera. I always have a stack of ND filters and polarizers with me, both variable and constant. I have some different brands here, but most of them are BW. I'm currently using the Rode Video Micro 2 microphone for vlogging because I love the size of this thing. When shooting Sony, Dan has been using the DJI RS3 Mini for the last couple of trips we went on, and this thing is so great considering it's pretty small. I absolutely love the way it smooths out footage. To be honest, now with the A9 III, which we got literally a couple weeks ago, so I'm not sure if we're going to keep using the gimbal for all the travels, we might replace it with dynamic steady shot instead. With tripods, I have been super happy with this setup. It's an inaural carbon fiber tripod, which I own in a couple of different sizes and a few different heads, but I travel with the 75C one as it's light enough to take with me, but still sturdy for my cameras. So that is what is in my travel camera bag. I'm really happy with this setup for now as it covers such a wide style of photography and videography. Let me know in the comments what your go-to travel lens is. Otherwise, thank you so much for watching. I make new videos every single week, so I will see you all next time. Bye.